So we are going to continue, and we've had some dynamic discussion thus far on what this hybrid workforce looks like and how we continue. What do we call it? Remote, flexible, hybrid, etc. We're going to take a deeper dive now with Judy Sailer. Judy, come on up. Judy, come on up. And remember, everybody's bio is on the cue card, so please check her out.
All right. So as of February 2023, 74% of all U.S. businesses either have or are moving to a permanent hybrid plan for their staff. Of that, 64% of those folks are high generating income companies, and they have learned to develop a productivity plan, meaning work wherever you need to work, just get your job done. Some of the things that we need to consider and look at with this, and someone else had already brought it up in a question, is, are we happy in the workplace? There are 3 billion people at work on the planet. 3 billion people. 40% of them are unhappy at work. Right? That's half the room. That's half the people online. So what do? Most of us are hybrid to a degree, or not, depending on your industry, of course. But either way, you have to make your staff feel involved, feel happy, wanting to continue to work and show up every day. So we're talking about 3 specific things that you can do or work on to improve your staff morale, your happiness, whatever you want to call it, to keep them engaged with you. The first one, fix communication. There is not a company or a country on the planet that couldn't try to improve its communication. We know this. We see hiccups with communication, right? You've got a new marketing plan. You're transitioning to a new phone system. You're having a trainer come in. You're hiring people. You're laying people off. You've got a budget change. We think we have communicated really well, and yet there will be people who will not know anything about what we're doing. Sometimes we do communicate really, really well, but the receiver doesn't get the message. The number one pivotal communication failure that I could find in doing my research was on December 24th, 1776. How far did I have to go back to find that? Remember that moment, right? Big hat, big boat, ice, leg up. George Washington's crossing the Delaware, okay? Pivotal moment in our history, right? Well, there was a guy, see? And his name was Colonel Johann Gottlieb Rall. Rall was the leader of the Hessians in Trenton. We're still embattled with Trenton. And so he had with him 3 regiments of Hessian soldiers. He had dispositioned artillery. He had 50 Jaegers. Jaegers? I had to go look that up. You know what they were? They're like the Marines. They're special elite forces. They would send out to go and hunt people down. And then he had what were called light dragons, which I was like, hey, I need a dragon. Get me one of those. No, they were horses. I'd still take a horse, not going to lie. He had the moment. But it was Yuletide, Christmas Eve. So he let the men relax. They were drinking, they were eating good food, they were hanging out with their friends. His supervisor sent a message and said, you need to be prepared for an attack. It's coming. You know what he did with that? He kind of filed that. The men are tired. We need to, get their morale back up. We need to make this happen. There was a little skirmish. The Americans were chased away. Everyone goes back to their merriment. Several hours later, a loyalist farmer comes with a note to be given to Rall that says specifically, they're coming across the river. We can see them. You know what he did with that note? Put it in his pocket. He never looked at it, not once. As he lay dying from his wounds, clearly that wasn't going to work out for him, he said, if I had only read the note at Mr. Hunt's, I'd not be here. Very pivotal moment, right? We start to look at what are the things that occur in communication that really mess us up. That, to me, is a pivotal moment. That changed the course of history. When we look at how much communication we do with people every day, how do you like to be communicated to? Is it an email? Is it a text message? Is it a phone call? Is it in person? I did a program once where we worked with 100 folks and we were looking to fix communication for the organization. The executive director of the organization, the only way he wanted to be communicated to was through email. He had a huge full schedule, like we all do, and he needed to be able to use his time between meetings to communicate things, to keep things moving. His whole admin team wanted FaceTime with the boss. You can't do both, right? So it becomes this push and pull. In order to make things really good with communication, you have to focus on three things. You have to focus on clarity, accuracy, and thoroughness of the message. You have to make sure they get the message. Now, it's difficult because we've got 5 generations in the workforce. And of those 5 generations, everybody likes to be communicated to differently. And it depends on who the communicator is sending to. Clearly, if you have children, we're all texting them at some point, while they're in school, while they're at sports, while they're somewhere. If we don't manage to get the correct levels of communication out to people, you will have percentages of your teams not know what's going on. Second thing, engagement, connectedness. I worked for nonprofits for 20 years. I was very young at that time. I really enjoyed it. I loved working with the young people, sometimes. The very first summer was excruciating. They were exhausted. It was hot. I was hiring 100 of them, and they were just all over the place. And at the end of that season, I thought, I have got to do something totally different than we've been doing. Because these young people are the frontline staff, right? I had to be really careful what they said or did. So I decided we would do training all year. I don't know why I thought that was a good idea. We had really fun trainings. We had prom at Olive Garden. Everybody came in their prom dresses and their suits. They all looked so dapper. And it was fun. But then we did the hard stuff. We did time management. We did conflict resolution. We did how do you talk to adults. We did color code. How do you talk to people? How are you going to give a message to people? July 15th of that summer, the building that we did all of our programming in burned down. No soccer balls, no footballs, no basketballs, no baseballs, no nothing, all gone. I had to call them, and I thought, we're going to cancel. We can't do this. I can't do this. I started with the college kids, which was probably the best idea, because they were like, no, we're doing it. Okay. Within the hour, they were showing up with equipment, toys, arts and crafts stuff. I'm sure every mom was like, oh, let me empty out the closet and send everything to camp. It worked. They did camp. And I directed traffic. I made sure they had whatever they needed. And they were wonderful. See, the team I was building had made a family, or a syndicate, depending on who you talk to. Fast forward, it is New Jersey, I heard that. Fast forward, they had a flood, took out the roads. The young people this was a year later, the young people show up and they're like, this is nothing, we're good. They got to work on their plans, adjusting schedules, making things happen. I was like, okay, go for it, have at it. You have to engage your people. I don't know what that's gonna mean for you. Everybody's just gonna be a little bit different. You know, I worked at Primepoint. I worked for Primepoint during the C word. We were having Friday night happy hours. I thought, oh God, this is silly. But it was fun. We got to see each other and talk, and people with babies and kids and having all those things. You have to connect with your people. The last part is accountability. In this organization that I worked for, I had a young woman who, at a certain point, staff were coming to me and saying, she's not doing her job. She's making more work for this. She's not showing up for this. She's not doing what we're supposed to be doing. So I said, okay, I'll meet with her. We'll get this settled. I meet with her. We have a great conversation. She's a very bright young woman. I thought, oh, this is good. We're going to save this. This is going to be great. That lasted like 24 hours. And I had to let her go. And it was like magic. Everybody sat up. They were standing straight. They were proud. They were washing their clothes. They showed up and they were like, this is awesome. And I'm watching. I'm like, what's going on? A timely termination of someone for a justified reason in the middle of a season made the rest of the season amazing. Amazing. Did I tell you I was young when all this was going on? You know what I did? Every year after that, I would hire someone I knew I was going to be firing. I know, right? I'm going to hell. But you could tell. You'd get to interviewing them, and they're kind of like, they're on their phones. They're doing anything else but actually being engaged in the conversation. And I would think, all right, it'll work. You're young. I'll get the guys to work with you. It'll be fine. Mid-season, all of a sudden, here comes my leadership team, and they're like, he is not. Okay. We'd sit down. We'd have our chat. Yeah, it didn't go so well. Okay, sorry, you'll be leaving. The rest of the season was like Disneyland. Kids were happy. Parents were happy. My boss was happy. It was fun again. Now, I use these examples because they're easy to remember, to think about. The tough part we have right now is you go to TikTok, and there's a brand new employee for an organization, and she tells you how much money she's about to make. And that is then stitched by someone who's currently working there, who's been there for 6 years and is still making the same salary that they just gave this young woman. That doesn't go so well. Then you have the TikTok where the young man goes to his manager and says, I quit. And the manager says, I'll give you a raise. He couldn't give him a raise when the kid was doing all the work. Now he's going to give him a raise because he needs the body. The last thing that's out there right now that we need to be aware of, there's our campaign for staff to not give notice. And the conversation is, you could get fired at any minute, and they're not going to do anything for you. Why would you give them 2 weeks' notice? They don't deserve that respect. See, people don't leave a job because of a title. They leave a job because there's poor communication, they don't feel engaged and connected, and they have this want of someone has to be accountable. Why should this person get a raise when I'm doing the work I'm supposed to be doing and they're not, and we're getting the same raise? Those 3 things, it doesn't matter if you're remote or in person. It doesn't. You will know who your staff are that are not engaged. You can see it in meetings. You can see their body language. If you want to keep really good staff, you have to communicate better. You have to engage them, make them part of the conversation, and you have to have accountability. Yes, everyone's afraid of losing staff, but if you're losing bad staff, you're probably ahead of the game. Thank you.